And we're rolling.
We're talking about lots of fasting.
Fast.
Intermittently fasting.
Intermittently, yes.
I think the goal and the idea here is just like maybe there's a lot of people that might need to eat a little bit less.
What?
Really?
Maybe spend a little bit less time focused
No
on
way.
food.
That's not a problem, right?
Maybe, and maybe, just maybe you and I had a problem with being hooked on food.
Mm. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. I still got some issues. I still love food. I think about it often.
It's weird, man. It's like you need that shit for life, right? But then you might be living a little bit too lavishly,
Right?
right? You might need to cut back on your spending a little bit. And I'm not talking about your money. I'm talking about your mouth.
And you,
That made sense initially, I think. Yeah, that makes sense.
It did.
It makes sense.
that was disgusting.
Wait.
I mean,
Was it disgusting though?
Right,
I think it makes
Andrew?
perfect sense. You got to stop using your mouth so much.
It's
yeah, but just the way you said it.
Yeah, it was
it's
kinda-
always great when like all your friends are going in on one thing and then you say something like that and they're just like, dude, whoa, and you're like, wait, what the fuck? I thought we all agreed that we all
Guys,
this
totally
consent.
normal.
Record skips. It's kind of like the
Yeah.
thigh wars, you know?
There's nothing wrong with thigh wars.
I didn't say there was.
Okay,
You seem defensive.
I was pretty good.
I bet.
I had some of the biggest thighs on the team. You know what I mean? I mean, I really did have some of the biggest thighs on the team. That's why. Yeah, but some
You can out thigh a lot of those guys, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, really. But then the problem comes when just like someone's a little bit too well endowed, and then there's
Is there such a thing?
sometimes you got a little bit too much. Like just sometimes it's just like that's barbaric.
It just hits you right in the face.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
I don't know. We should back off a little bit because people don't know what we're talking about. We seem mad weird right now. So let's go back to fasting.
Talking about fasting.
Right. That's what we're going to talk about, fasting.
Yeah, stop using your mouth so much. Stop eating so much food all the time.
One of the problems that you can run into when you fast is that you reduce your calories a lot.
Yeah.
Especially if you fast for the whole day, didn't consume any calories. And you can start to feel like dog shit.
Yes.
How do we combat this?
That's one thing we talked about in the last episode. This is part 2, by the way, of jacked fasting or fasting.
Give or take. Let's see. What did we call it? Let me pull it up. Yeah, jacked fasting.
Jacked fasting. So yeah, in part 1.
I think it's jacked fasting.
Jacked fasting.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
With 2 question marks.
Today has 2 question marks. Correct.
In the first part, we kind of mentioned how, y'all need to make sure that when you do some intermittent fasting, it's going to be easy. It's going to be pretty easy to not eat a lot of food when you're supposed to be eating. But if you want to be able to perform, you have to be able to eat enough food for performance. And if you don't, and if you eat like, let's just say, you're a 200-pound male and you just ate 1,000 calories and you expect to be able to perform the next day without trying to eat before your workout will either feel like doo-doo if you don't eat before it. And you probably won't feel great, but that's just because you haven't had enough food the night before. But I think there's another thing to it. If you do, because we've already drilled in that you guys got to make sure you're eating enough when you're actually eating, right? There is kind of a mental thing. If you've been eating before training your whole life, and then now you're not going to eat before you train, there is going to be a little bit of a mental block to being able to push yourself to perform when you don't have some food in your stomach, because that used to be a ritual. At least it was for me. I'd always eat 2 hours before training. And
I don't have what I need. It's going to be a bad workout.
Exactly.
You already told yourself that.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that can really be beneficial is to make sure you get your electrolytes in. I know, like, even just while you're eating. So I agree with Nsima, and I think that's really well said, is that when you do have the opportunity to eat, make sure that you eat and also make sure that you get the nutrients that you need. And so we need macronutrients and we need micronutrients. Some of the micronutrients that we need are in the form of electrolytes. We need magnesium, potassium, sodium, and we can get those things, just simply sometimes by eating an array of food. If you get like fruit in there, you get some veggies, you have some meat, you'll have most of your things covered, and you dump some salt on your food, should be good to go. But you can also take something like Element, maybe on the day that you're actually fasting, or you're trying intermittent fasting, or you're not eating much of anything for the whole day. Maybe you have a coffee and you throw in, I look forward to having the chocolate salt in my coffee in the morning. I know some people get used to having cream or sweeteners of some other kind, but I actually enjoy that. And then, maybe later on in the day, if I am fasting, it makes it way easier to make it through that fast and to still have really good workouts, not get headaches, not feel like you're going to pass out. Sometimes your blood pressure will get really low. Sometimes your blood pressure and your blood sugar feel super low. But if you get that little dump of sodium in there right before you train, you'll feel a little stronger. Pumps will be a little bit better. So highly recommend some Element.
Yeah. The best benefit that I've noticed, not the best, but just one of the ones that I get, the most benefit out of is I used to get crazy leg cramps after a leg day. Like we'd go to have a leg session. I'd come in here, we'd podcast, and I'd stand up and I just had to fall right back down because I'd be cramping up big time. That doesn't happen anymore. And I mean, it all changed when I started taking Element electrolytes. And you guys really have to experience this. Again, as of today, they still are offering the free Element recharge pack. You just pay the $5 shipping. You get an 8 sample pack from Element. You guys get a chance to try out, these amazing electrolytes that you guys have heard us talking about over the years. And if you are ready to dive into making a full purchase, we highly recommend the value bundle. That's getting 4 boxes for the price of 3. Check out the watermelon salt, grapefruit salt. Those are the 2 brand new flavors, and they absolutely hit it out of the park with these. Head over to drinklmnt.com/power project. Again, load up that value bundle or check out the free recharge pack. No code needed. Just go to drinklmnt.com/power project and start enjoying some of the amazing benefits of these electrolytes.
And Nsima, I know you enjoy some Ben and Jerry's. And Andrew, what are some of your favorite sweet foods?
Sweets?
Or even just I don't know, favorite foods to indulge on, overeat?
Honestly, lately it's been like Oreos. Like I've been all
right. So here's
been around.
Here's my question to both of you.
Mm-hmm.
At what time of day would you normally reach for a Ben and Jerry's?
In the evening, late night.
What time of day would you normally reach for these Oreos?
Definitely not breakfast. So yeah, towards the end of the day.
So I notice a trend that's going on, and I actually been thinking about this a lot because this is something I've had a hard time curtailing, over the years is, late night eating and even waking up in the middle of the night and thinking that I'm hungry and going in the kitchen and starting to trash the pantry. I've gotten a lot better with this. I can have a protein shake or I can have something on hand. Just because I'm not really awake. I'm half asleep. I know what I'm doing. I definitely know what I'm doing. You said I'm going to light your house on fire and you got to make yourself stop doing this. I could stop doing it, but I'm not fully aware of what I'm doing. I find this to be really fascinating. And I don't know what causes this or what makes this happen, but even in the cases that you guys pointed out of reaching for that Ben and Jerry's or reaching for this sleeve of Oreos that you might want to devour, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it makes sense to some degree because it tastes really good. But what would you say? What would you say to your kid if your kid just ate? You would say, "Nah, you just hey, can I have that?" I mean, you're going to allow them to have some stuff here and there, right? But you would say, "No, you just ate." Or if they're going to reach for it before they are about to eat, you say, "We're cooking dinner." Please put that back. We're cooking dinner type thing. It doesn't make any sense. We eat, we're full, and sometimes even beyond full. Sometimes you even really got that pressure built up in your stomach. And then for some reason we reach for more food. And I think if it's an innocent thing of you just had some and you went through half a thing of Ben and Jerry's or even a full pint, or you went through some Oreos, but there was some sort of stopping point, not really a huge deal, probably, as long as it doesn't happen all the time. Probably no harm. But I think that a lot of people are sabotaging their diets, and it happens, 7 p.m. and onward. I think if most Americans just didn't eat from 7 p.m. until about 10 a.m., I think we would see a lot of obesity start to disappear, and I think we would see a lot of disease start to disappear. And so I'm kind of wondering, what is happening in these hours of the day or night where these demons are rearing their ugly heads?
Well, one big thing is that you're not as busy. I mean, when we think about it, if you were, if you were doing nothing all day long, nothing, And it's interesting because there have like when I think back to like maybe the summers when I was younger and I wasn't really doing anything if I wasn't in school, I'd sometimes eat junk food during the day because I wasn't doing much during my day, right?
Mhm.
So like I think that's the thing. It's like it's not that you have to always keep yourself occupied, but I do think that that's a very good idea in terms of just having a rule that you're not gonna eat food between maybe the hours of 7 or 8 p.m. and 10 a.m. the next day because those are the times when people like there's a reason why the late night snack is a thing.
Mm.
People wake up, they go to the fridge, they reach for the milk and Oreos, and they have some fun. So that late night eating can really be a that's why when you asked me, I was like late night because it literally the only times I really have this stuff is late night.
Yeah, by then your defenses are down.
Oh yeah.
We can go this route, but like you are literally like done for the day. You are tired. You no longer have the ability to make smart decisions. You have only X amount of what's it called, like problem solving throughout the day, where
Yeah.
you can do that at 100%.
Mhm.
Then you do it again, it's 90%. And it kind of does that throughout the day. So at the end of your day, you're kind of just like, fuck it, yeah, I'll go for it. Like, because you're, again, like I said, your defenses are down, and your I guess, yeah, problem solving isn't as high as it was earlier in the day.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing right there. Like, I mean, I'm so happy you mentioned that because like there's a reason why like a lot of people, they set plans, so that during the day they don't have to say, okay, well, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? That's why a lot of people,
Automation.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people automate things so that they don't need to think anymore, even to the clothes that they wear. Well, how about let's have that automation for the time you're going to eat. I'm already going to eat here. I already have that plan, so I'm not going to think about anything else. Then I'm just going to eat at 4 to 7, 3 to 7, and that's it.
There's a saying that says like something to the effect of like idle time is the devil's playground.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
And when you ain't got shit to do, like that's when you whack off. That's when I
Yep.
mean, temptation, right? Like there's temptations that pop in that, I don't know, like maybe you are just, you're seduced into like doing something slightly different than what you would normally do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your mind, Andrew said, your defenses are down. Maybe the day was full of activity. Maybe some of your interpretation of that day and some of what happened was stress or stressful in some maybe negative way. And you're kind of, I think the human body is always like in search of some of the opposite. So when you have a salty dinner, you have things that are savory. It's like, what's the opposite of like eating steak? Well, like having something sweet, So I think we're in search of a lot of those things after we eat dinner, and it might explain part of the reason why we reach for these things. But the reason why I brought it up in the first place is that I think that intermittent fasting already is a part of people's lives. It's just that they maybe have not tried to introduce it as like a real rule, and maybe they haven't been intentional about it. I think there's a huge difference. Even when people talk about taking psychedelics and people talk about taking different drugs and they talk about like being intentional, like I do think there's a big difference. Even working out, exercising.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between exercising and training. Training is like with an intent. You have a goal, you're going after it. And because you're going after that goal, descending downward from the goal, you're like, these are the things that I need to do in order to get to that goal. And when it comes to fasting, if you accidentally are fasting here and there, 6 hours, 8 hours, to me, it's quite a bit different than having an intentional, like I'm not eating from 7 a.m. Or 7 p.m. until 10 a.m. every day. That's a steadfast rule that I'm going to work on following pretty much for most of my life, with some occasions that might pop up. I think that's a little bit different. And then extending it beyond that and starting to get into 12-hour, 14-hour, 16-hour, 18-hour fast, to me, that's way, way different than just kind of haphazardly not eating.
Your job is something that forces it gives you part of a schedule that you don't have to think about. And the reason why I say that is because I notice that the people that I suggest fasting to that typically do the best with it, they're like, oh, this is actually really easy, are the people that have jobs where it keeps them pretty busy. Cops, nurses, like people who are working, when they do fasting, they're just like, okay, so I just don't eat during my shift. I don't eat before I go to work. I just have electrolytes and
Cuts out a lot of complication.
and they men and women, they're like, it's not actually not that big of a deal. But the people that really have a hard time with it are the people with a lot of free time. And the thing is like when you're not really focused on doing something for a period of time during your day, well, you're gonna be like, put something in my mouth. Like it's like, let me go eat something, and you don't really think about it. But if you can get you like this can be a much easier thing if you get yourself doing things that are gonna keep your mind occupied, keep your body occupied. Job, hobby, whatever it is, do something.
Job, hobby, walking,
Yeah.
learning. You know, there's like so many things that you can add in. You can listen to some podcasts. You could kind of research something that you've been thinking about for a long time. There's just a lot of options. That's why we talk about this kind of stuff a lot. And that's why I made the t-shirt a while back, the shirt that said occupy your mind, because like, man, that's a huge thing. It's just figure out a way to occupy your mind every day. Like another example too is like, and I've mentioned this before, which is kind of silly, but like when you're doing jujitsu, you're not like eating a sandwich in between, you know, in between like rolls, right? You're not, when we're training at the gym, like these are all for people that are obese or people that have really struggled with their diet for a long period of time. Let's find some places for you to go where you know you'll be involved in something else, you'll be engaged in something else, and no one's talking about food. Because one of the hard pulls back into food is the people that surround you a lot of times, because you know, your friend wants to go out on his boat this weekend. And you might already be thinking like, shit, man, like I've been on my diet pretty good for the last 4 or 5 days. Like that's going to be a day where I'm, you know, way off track. But like we said on the first show, you can kind of camouflage yourself into these situations by having a little bit of fasting going into it. And before you go on this boat trip or whatever it is that you're doing, you know, eat some steak, maybe eat some eggs. And when you eat, you can eat more reasonably. You can choose not to eat, but you can eat a sandwich. You can have a beer. It's not going to have as much of a negative impact on you as if you went into it just, you know, super hungry.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's two ways. There's two ways with that. It's like either you don't eat and then you go and you enjoy some stuff, but since you haven't been eating for the whole day, you're not eating a crazy amount of calories, or have some protein beforehand so you can be kind of satiated before you do whatever you're about to do. Still, that's going to help you not eat as much. Both these things help you not eat as much. One thing I was going to mention too, and I think this is something that a lot of people are going to. There are going to be some people that are like, oh, but no, that's not true. Anyway, one thing that I've found is that being a performance athlete, as long as I have enough food in my system from the night before, I eat enough calories, I can perform really, really well. You know, we had Mike Rizzutel on, and he even mentioned, he was like, you know, if you have some carbs before, you know, your bodybuilding workout, you might be able to perform that much better. And I do get that, and I do agree to an extent, but the difference for me, because I end up eating enough when I eat in the evenings, is so minimal. And I think actually I get more of the focus side of things when I'm doing a workout or I'm doing jujitsu. And George St. Pierre talked about this when he was on Rogan. He mentioned that he wishes when he was actually fighting, he wishes that when he was doing in his MMA career, he wished he did more fasting, like utilize that prior to his fights and prior to his training, because he noticed that he was just much sharper when it came to executing things. I notice that all the time too. If I eat before, I'm generally just not as fluid, I'm not as sharp, I'm not as focused. If I ate a lot the night before and I'm fueled up and ready, have my electrolytes, and I don't eat before I train, I roll better. I train pretty damn good too. So I really think for a lot of you guys that, like, let's say you want to implement this, but maybe in the back of your head, you're like, I'll lose muscle, which you won't. We can talk about that, but you won't. Or I won't perform at a high level. That's not the case. That's not the case necessarily.
I will say that I have overfasted before. I think you've experienced that as well.
Yes.
I've overfasted. I've also overdone every training and every diet that I've ever tried. So when somebody says you're going to lose muscle, I find that statement to be very interesting because I'm just imagining that losing muscle to some extent to get on a bodybuilding stage is most likely going to happen at least a little bit.
Towards the end.
Right? It's gonna happen, right? And for your average person just trying to like look good in a t-shirt, they probably don't maybe need to go to that extent of like, but if somebody is losing a lot of weight, what may happen to you and what happened to me was I over dieted in some situations. I over ketoed myself. I underfed myself enough to where there was times, and fasted enough or fasted too much to the point where I got a little stringy. You just get this look. There's no other great way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, my arms usually are a little more bubbly. They're usually a little bit more full. My shoulders, I usually have a kind of fuller look to me. And I normally don't look dead behind my eyeballs.
You look frail. You feel frail.
Yeah, and you feel like someone could just come up to you and fuck you up. And even though that can be problematic, it's really easy to solve by just eating a little extra. So sometimes people might have to kind of get themselves in that position. And that might be what some people are talking about when they're thinking about losing muscle, because I can definitely say that from keto and from fasting, I have lost a little bit of muscle from time to time. But it's just because that when I look back at it, I was just overdoing it a little bit. And now I understand, like, I don't need to do it that way. And I can still get lean and still hold on to a lot of muscle.
Yeah, you guys right now have great physiques. You guys have developed a lot of muscle over the years. You're both strong. You're jacked. You're tan. But if you're not there yet, do you still think that fasting for, I guess I'll just say younger athletes, or just maybe people who haven't been in the game that long, would you still recommend fasting for an athlete that's still trying to develop muscle and still trying to make their way to, having a bigger, stronger physique?
I personally would. Most people have too much body fat on them. And so I think that there's many different ways to get a body fat off of you. So I want to make sure that's clear. Fasting is not the only diet in town. There's many different ways you can go about doing this. But even when I think about like Angelo, who does some work for us, like he started lifting more recently, and just right away he has great genetics for to do some bodybuilding potentially.
Yeah.
It looks awesome, but the main thing that makes him not at the moment look completely amazing, especially like with his shirt off, is the fact that he's just not quite lean enough yet. And so even in his case, he's not a huge guy. He's not a heavy guy. He could benefit from having less body fat. Most people have like excess body fat hanging on their body that just doesn't enhance the overall look. And so if you can pull that off, it's almost like a distraction. Like when someone's just like shredded, like you don't know, you're not going to even be like, oh man, that guy's not even that big. You're just going to be like, that dude's fucking shredded. That's really where your mind's going to go to. Or that person has no body fat on him at all. You're kind of like, you're perplexed. You're like, fuck, man, that's because I think we understand like that can be difficult for a lot of people to figure out. So I don't really know if there's situations where I wouldn't recommend fasting to somebody.
Yeah, I get your question too. I mean, like, let's say a guy's trying to build muscle, and a lot of the stuff you hear is like, have like 4 or 5 different meals so you can shovel the food in, etc. And if you're an individual who does find it hard to get an appetite, and you find it hard to eat enough so you can get bigger, if you're in that realm, okay, I think that you don't need to do like a 16-8 or whatever, 18-6 or 20. You don't need to do that. You don't need to eat only for 4 hours, because it's going to be hard for you to get in the food you need to eat. But I think that still the benefit of having habit control when it comes to your response to being hungry, that benefit can be, you can strengthen that even if you just decided to start eating at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. You have a 7-hour window, right? Like, or an 8-hour window to eat or whatever. I don't think that I don't know. If you find that you still can't get enough food in that period of time, you can't get the calories you need so you can grow, increase that window. But if we really think about what fasting is, right? because people are like, oh, you're going to lose muscle, or oh, it's unsafe or whatever. For most people, you're just not eating for 5 hours of your waking time or 4 hours of the time you're awake. Is that
Put it that way? It sounds like pathetic not to be able to do it.
really? Like, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like, after I wake up, I'm just not eating for 4 or 5 hours. Is that going to cause you not to be able to grow if you eat enough food? No. Or is that going to cause you to get into disordered eating? I mean, some people, but that's not a majority of the people that we're talking to here.
But you can't store protein.
Yeah, the whole you can't store protein. Is that?
That's what people say, right? You can't store. I mean, you can store carbs,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's obvious that we store body fat. We store it right around our waist usually.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people say.
Yeah, it's a whole even feedings of protein help for better protein synthesis, or the better utilization of protein through your day, and that's so marginal. It has been researched that if you have 5 even protein feedings versus like 1, you're gonna be able to better use that protein to build muscle or to maintain muscle.
And exercise also increases protein synthesis, but it also breaks down muscle tissue. I mean, there's going to be a constant building and breaking down of muscle tissue. And I just think like maybe not enough people in the bodybuilding and lifting community have done fasting. Like when I talk to my buddy Chris, who runs some bodybuilding shows, he's never even tried fasting. So he's not a fan. He's like, I would never recommend it. And then he paused because he's smarter than that. And he's like, you know what? I actually have never done it, so I don't know. And he and I were talking during a workout one day, and then he was like, dude, he's like, how are you staying so lean? It's like, he's like, you're still really lean from last time I saw you. And he's like, actually, you look a little leaner. And I was like, it's because I fast. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I don't feel like I'm doing anything special. What I'm doing doesn't feel hard. I still live my life. I still drink wine with my wife here and there. I'll still eat something off plan here and there. But the more that I lean into intermittent fasting, the more play that I have, because the leaner that my body is, and the leaner that my body is, the more calories I'm burning. So it just seems to keep working and working and working. Whereas other diets that I've done in the past, where I've like tried to really reduce calories, or I tried to, be keto as fuck or something like that.
When eating through the whole day, right?
Yeah, when eating through the whole day, I did start to feel like crap. I did feel like I was doing something. I did feel really restricted, and it was difficult, and it was harder to maintain.
Restricted, you are restricted in both ways, both while we're doing fasting. You are using intermittent fasting, and when we are eating throughout the day but still trying to be in a caloric deficit, both are restricted. But in terms of one, you don't feel like you're being restricted.
Correct.
And the other, you feel like most people feel like they're being restricted, even when flexible dieting, because you have that first meal and all you're thinking about is your next meal and your next meal. And yet to the end of the day, with the small meal that you typically have that's filled with a bunch of fiber so you can fill your stomach up, you finish it and you're not satisfied.
Actually, it'd be a cool TikTok video for you to do. Like if you broke down about how many calories you eat in a day, which I know you don't really count or track, but you can
25 and 35 between there.
Yeah, so you can have an estimate, right? So if you show people, hey, this is what it looks like when I have 3,000 calories at once. And it looks like you're having a goddamn party.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're inviting other people over to that party, but it's like, no, this is all for me. When your meals are cut down to 5 or 6, you got this little tiny, you're a big guy. So you'll be sitting in front of this little tiny fucking thing of food being like, wah, wah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You'll be sad,
that's
right?
A fucking great video. Good thing no one listens to our show so they won't steal it. No, I'm joking. But that's actually, that makes a lot of sense. But that's it really what goes on when I can have these two big satisfying meals, right? And both meals fill me up, or that one big meal fills me up, versus trying to split that into 4 or 5 different meals during the day that, for me personally, don't really fill me up unless I use like a lot of fiber, etc., to just take space up in my stomach.
There's a lot of ways this can be done too. People don't have to really do it the way that you do it, or do it the way that I do it. I have some friends that are very successful with their diets, where they just don't usually eat until around 11 or 12 each day. They usually stop eating at like 7 p.m. or so. that's still a long ass fast. Their first meal will be around lunchtime ish. Their second meal would be around like 2 or 3, and then last meal of the day would be that meal at like 6 or 7, and that's it. And they put it on repeat. But having some like, having some steadfast rules and having a schedule of like, hey, I'm gonna eat approximately at this time every day. I mean, there's a lot of research even that shows if you follow like people like Jeff Nippard, there's a lot of people that talk about, following a schedule, doing things at certain times every day, working out a certain time every day, we know how important it is to have like a sleep schedule. Go to bed, wake up similar times ish, the best you can handle, eat at similar times. It's really going to be something that will benefit you a lot.
Yeah. It makes a very, very, very big difference. And I attribute not just like, I think one of the big reasons why I've been able to stay lean and not feel like I'm dieting or not feel really like I don't perform well is number one, because now I'm utilizing more fat. When I was, 6 years ago, when I dieted this much, I wasn't high fat. I mean, yeah, I was pretty low fat. So I felt tired, but also at the same time, I'm able to have much more substantial meals. I'm not food focused. So I still perform at a high level. My hormones are doing great. And being this lean, I can be this lean forever. Literally, I could do this forever and never feel like I'm dieting. And that's not just because of my genetics, because I have done this before and felt like shit. So,
and I think you could even be leaner.
I could.
Like if you, I don't think it would be hard. I don't think maybe if you got to 5%, but I think that you could get to 6% and you can chill there for a bit, maybe come back up a little bit, maybe dip down to 5. And I think you could toggle it. And if you really wanted to, you could even stay at 5% probably.
Maybe.
You might find a degree, right, where it's like, it's not manageable at all. Like, or it might just be because of the amount of output that you have with jujitsu, it just doesn't make sense anymore. But the point is like you can continue to kind of like scale down. People can scale down. I mean, getting down to 5% body fat is ridiculous, you know, but people can continue to scale down from wherever they're currently at. You can lose 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, so on.
Yeah. Before I get into this fan or listener question, I guess everybody that's watching, if you guys dig this content, some of these shorter episodes, please share it with somebody that you think this would benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then definitely hit that like button if you like what's happening right now. But Kevin asks, do you think our bodies get accustomed to training in a fasted state?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I personally think so, just because like my body was accustomed to training in a state where I had to eat beforehand. So all the times when I wasn't using fasting and I was like, I'm going to eat 2-3 hours before I train, the times that maybe I didn't manage to get a meal in, and even though I wasn't fasting, but randomly, let's say I just had a busy day, I'd train, I'd be a bitch. I'd be like, oh, the weights are feeling so heavy and I don't have fuel. And yeah, but when I started fasting, I started training fasted initially, I was like, oh, I got to do this. But I got used to it. I don't feel crappy then when I train fasted and when I add food in. It's not a big difference.
You certainly get used to it. And again, keep in mind, we're mainly talking about intermittent fasting. So if you're doing like a longer fast of 24, 48, 72, and you're not used to those, you might need to be a little cautious with how you proceed with your exercise. But usually like through intermittent fasting, it's like I usually feel just fine working out. I haven't really, the only times I've ever noticed any sort of negative impact with lifting has been when I dropped body weight significantly. I've also had situations where I maybe was calorically restricted, but this is like few and far between. This hasn't happened that often, where I just didn't have like a lot of energy. But that usually I don't really think that was connected to the food as much as it was connected to maybe overtraining or just training really heavy the day before. Like if I look back, I'm like, yeah, it's like I trained really hard the day before. There's been times where I'm trying to introduce like running and I'm like deadlifting and like just doing a lot of different stuff all at one time. But most of the time, the negative impact that you might see in your training, if you're coming from being a big boy and you're trying to drop that body weight, would be once you start to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds, you're going to notice most likely, unless you're new to lifting, you're going to notice some decreases in strength. You're going to notice when you go to bench press, your arms shake, or you go to deadlift and you start shaking and shimmying around a little bit. But you can recalibrate. You can get used to that, and you can get stronger at those new body weights. The main thing for people to focus in on, for most people, and most of the people that are interested in even listening to this in the first place, fasting is going to be a huge benefit because it's going to help you reduce your body fat. And for me personally, fasted training has always felt good. And don't bother getting too into the weeds about whether you think you're burning more fat or whether you need a post-workout shake, or I think those things are small, and I don't think they're that important.
Get those electrolytes in though, because that will make a difference for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Getting adequate sodium and all that stuff. That's actually what Roxanne just mentioned on the live chat. Just adding salt to like coffee and stuff throughout the day has helped tons with fasting.
Yeah.
So to that, I would say just add element because it'd make it even better.
Yeah, keep in mind that this, fasting is just developing a skill set. That's really what it is. Same thing with going lower carb and just recognizing like your body you do not necessarily need, quote unquote, need dietary carbohydrates. And once you kind of get some distance from that and just recognize I don't necessarily need that, I can use it when I want as a supplement. I can use it to propel me forward in a training session, but I don't necessarily always need it. I don't necessarily always need to have food with me every 5 seconds so that I'm not, breaking down protein, or that I'm not, that I have shitty workouts.
Yeah. I would like to revisit what Nsima was saying about having 5 meals a day versus having 1 to 2. You had said something sort of like one's going to leave you hungry and the other one's not. On the surface, someone's going to be like, well, obviously 5 meals, I'm going to be able to I'm going to be able to eat throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be hungry. Those 2 meals at the end of the day, like I'm going to be starving all day long. I guess the question is, can you clarify why the answer is the answer, and also what like the adaptation period would be for something like that to actually start happening?
Okay. So there's 2 things to this. Going into building the habit of fasting, most people are already like, they're eating all day long. So once they do that first fast, and let's just say it's just a 12 hours. So they start eating, let's say you wake up at 8, so they start eating at noon. Just skipping breakfast is going to feel like an ordeal. Okay. So don't get it twisted, guys. Like when I did this for the first time, like I just skipped breakfast. I was like, oh, I'm so hungry. Like, cause I've never been in a situation where I just didn't respond to hunger. Right. But the thing is as you get used to that and you're usually busy during your day, you don't even pay attention to that during the day. And then in the evening, when you eat, those meals are very big. They're very satisfying. So there is an adaptation period to getting used to not responding to hunger signals during your day. And then another thing you're going to notice is that I paid attention to this. You don't get as many pumps of hunger through your day when your body is used to not eating for the first part of your day.
Right.
So the reason why this can be so easy for us is, firstly, we've been doing it for a minute and our bodies have adapted to not eating all day long, not stuffing food in our mouth all day. That's why I can say, and I like how I'm so happy you mentioned that, Andrew, because when I say this, most people who start it, they're like, how the fuck is he not feeling hungry? I was there, you were there, right? But just by doing it long enough, we actually don't really feel that hungry during our day.
And I would say that sometimes you do. Sometimes like a little hunger hits you, or somebody's eating in the break room at work, or
Sorry.
I don't know, a commercial on TV you see, you're like, oh shit. Or we talk about food on the podcast, and you're like, stomach starts rumbling a little bit, but like it's not, I mean, it's not anything like panic over, you're like, I'll just kind of get to it when I can get to it.
Yeah, not anything to panic over now. At one point, yeah, it was definitely panic. And we just got back from a 10-minute walk, and I was explaining, like, before we started the first podcast today, I was like, dude, I should probably eat, because if I don't eat now,
I'm going catabolic.
Well, I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking, like, my stomach's going to be growling. I'm going to be uncomfortable. By the time we finish the second podcast, I'm, like, calculating, like, it'll be past 1 at that time. And then it's like, well, shit, I might as well just go home. So I'm like, fuck, I'm not going to eat all day while I'm here. a little bit of that panic did set in, but I also knew like, no, I can control this by just, I don't know, kind of staying busy, but also understanding that like that hunger is going to go away. And when it comes to, you know, productivity hacks and all these things that people want to try to get an edge in their, you know, work day or whatever, to me, fasting has always been that, because I'm not attached to food. I'm not like, oh, it's 10 o'clock, I got to go have my in-between meal. Oh, it's 12, I got to go have lunch. And it's like, oh, it's 1, like, yep, I got to finish out my next meal before I get home. And it's like every couple hours, like, you're just going to stop working to go, you know, grab something to eat. Like, dude, just keep trucking. And, you know, you keep the calories down and keep the productivity up.
Remember what we always preach too is that if you end up overeating, then your fast was ineffective. You know, so if you end up, if you like, if Nsima ends up eating 7,000 calories,
he'll do it.
You know, then the fast didn't work great for that day. So if you fasted 20 hours and now you ate 3 days worth of food, because really, truthfully, I believe that maybe the only way to properly fast, to ensure that you like just no way could physically overeat, would be if you ate about 3 times a week.
Yeah.
3 meals per week. That would ensure that, like, unless you were Joey Chestnut, you know, a world famous eater, professional eater, that you wouldn't overeat, you know, with that reduced amount of meals. So if you overeat, it didn't work.
I equate it to this.
Very well said.
I equate it to this, and it always comes back down to sex.
Always.
It's just, I think about this like,
What does? What are you talking about?
Now listen.
Dude, you're twisted. The longer that we get to know you, the worse this gets.
It's because I'm around you so much.
Andrew, hit the red button, Andrew.
But listen, y'all, like, we have all these, like, we have.
I need a more sensual voice if you're gonna talk.
We have all these urges
Thank you.
that we deal with all the time: hunger, horniness. Mark, stop beating your meat on the table.
Oh, sorry.
Now listen.
I was close.
I'm happy you didn't finish. Now listen, guys. Whenever you feel horny, you don't just go beat your meat at work. And if you do, that's a problem. But when you feel hungry,
it only happened one time.
Yeah, right? You go and you reach for something to put in your mouth, right? So all we're doing is we're just trying to train y'all not to beat your meat at work. You have, you know, power not to respond to all of your sexual urges all the time. So don't respond to all of your hunger urges all the time.
You might have power over
Then there's Tiger Woods.
Oh, Tiger. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I was saying, guys. It's just like, you don't always, you know, you'd be a deviant if every time you felt horny during the day, you're just like, right? Well, kind of, if you're always responding to hunger, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
could be problematic for you.
Problematic.
Use that aggression somewhere else. Like, go lift.
Go lift.
Don't go jack off.
Have you wondered why I lift so much? Haven't you wondered why I have to have some sort of physical
wonder why
activity
you're
every
so
single
jacked.
day?
Oh, important.
It's a distraction
It's
from it
a
all.
distraction.
Yeah. That's great.
We have some questions from. Do we have any more questions from YouTube?
Go for it.
All right, so there's some questions on
What?
IG,
Instagram?
on Instagram.
That's still around?
It's still around. It's the old people app, but it's still around.
Hey.
Now, someone asks, how do each of you break your fast?
Oh, food. You know, I don't think it's like a massive concern, although I have had situations where I like ate too fast, you know, because I was like, if you're fasting for like 48 hours, but if just with intermittent fasting, I haven't noticed anything that crazy. I used to break the fast with like bone broth and stuff like that, but I just found it didn't really matter much. I normally will break my fast with some type of protein, which is usually a steak or burger from Piedmontese.
Yeah, I break it with usually protein and fat too. And let me tell you, like, it was one of the first few times that I did fasting. I ate too fast. Like, I was super hungry, you know, and I ate too fast and too much, and I was mad nauseous, and I think I threw up a
Wow.
little bit. This is one, and that's the thing. It's like one thing you got to realize is if you're going through the day and you haven't eaten anything, your stomach might be a little bit sensitive. So if you pile too many different things in at once,
Mhm.
that doesn't feel good. So that's why, like nowadays, it'll just be something protein rich and with some fat, and I won't eat it all in like an hour. I'll spread that out a
Mhm.
little bit.
Yeah.
After participating and doing like one meal a day for quite some time, I wouldn't recommend that be a place where people start. I would think, I think 2 to 3. So first of all, if you're just not used to fasting at all, then just, I don't know, try a couple 10, 12-hour fasts and just see how you can do with that, and then see if you can add time to that and get yourself up to 16 hours at some point. But one meal a day, done frequently, done days in a row, is probably going to lead to overeating.
Yeah.
And could lead to some like bad habits. So I'm not saying it can't be done. It's a great way to eat, and for some people, it may be a great way for them to kind of, it might be a good skill set to learn. But I don't think it's a great place to start. Start out with like 2 or 3 meals, and try to be reasonable with those meals. Like, I don't want people just eating like a bird and then being super hungry all day. When it's time to eat, you do need to eat. When you are hungry, you do need to eat, but you need to learn to push off the hunger. Like, you're just pushing it away a couple times a day. You're not completely neglecting it. You're not completely forgetting about it. So I think just that might be a way for you to handle the diet for longer and to be able to get better results from it, is just to just be careful you don't push it too hard, too far.
Yeah, and I feel like there's almost an adaptation period with coming off the fast also, because I remember when I was fasting every single day for at least 16 hours or more. Sometimes I would go way over, and I would get like that weird tingly feeling. I don't know. I think we talked about it on air. Like, I would start eating, and all of a sudden it was like I took some sort of a psychedelic. Like, I started feeling like, yeah, I basically got high. Like, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But just to quickly answer the question, like, I break my fast with either it's for sure lean protein, so whether it be chicken or steak, from Eat Right Foods, and some rice. It's pretty basic, but it's basically the same thing every day.
And
Something I've been recommending to some people is just eat when you're home. It seems like most people are home twice a day, so cook yourself some breakfast and then eat again when you come home. And I know that that's not the same as like stretching out this like 16-hour fast, but I really don't believe that has a crazy importance. So if you were to, like, this morning, I ate some eggs, I had an omelet. I think I'm going to fast until I eat tomorrow night, which would be Wednesday night. So it'd be like a 36-hour fast. But having those eggs and having that amount of fat in the morning with some sausage and some cheese, like, I'm still not hungry. Like, that was so fucking good. And I still totally feel fine. So again, make sure those fat calories are high. And for people that have jobs that, you're away from the house for the day, but you don't know what to do with work and just eat when you're home. Eat in the beginning of the day and eat when you come home at the end of the day.
Cool. We have another good question
That
from
was good.
that sounds really good.
Yeah,
Now. I'm
that
just
does.
picturing it right now.
that Piedmontese summer sausage, though.
Hey, now that stuff's really
That shit's
good.
great.
I haven't had it.
Yeah, you did.
The summer. Oh, that was the hot dogs.
You had it in Bodega.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's called a hot dog or a summer sausage?
It's summer sausage. It was the round. Anyway,
Okay, let's keep going.
from JB.
JB.
If you are eating 2 meals per day, how much time in between meals? And this, I guess, is going to be hard for us to answer, but how much protein? So, but I think that the timing thing is pretty good. For me personally, if I do any, like, a long fast and it's 2 meals a day, it's just a mad dash before like 8 p.m. to just get all the food in. And lately I've been eating later than that, but like when I am doing a strict like feeding window, I'm just trying to pile in as much food as I can.
Yeah. So my friend, my suggestion would just be like, I think I'm kind of like you in a way. Like, I'm just like, okay, well, I have this meal, so I should wait 2.5 hours on the dot before I have the next meal. Nah, it doesn't matter.
No.
Like, have your meal, and if you're satisfied, cool, wait a little bit, and then like, you got to make sure though after you have that meal, because it could be an easy tendency to just not eat again, right? But you got to make sure to get those calories in. So when you feel a little bit hungry again, just make that second meal, eat it. eat it as soon as you can. It could turn into a meal. 30 minutes later, another meal. It doesn't have to be some set amount of time. Even if you have an 8-hour window, to be perfectly honest, I'd say like if you end up eating those meals in 3 hours, cool. If you get
Yeah.
in the calories you need to get in, I wouldn't be too narrow about that and let it boggle your mind.
One thing I've noticed for myself, and maybe you've noticed this too. So in other cultures, they eat to no longer be hungry. It's very common in the United States to eat until you're stuffed, eat until you're gonna like pop and burst,
Yeah.
right? I have found personally for myself, when I overeat, it tends to kind of let a lot of old bad habits want to creep in. So I will have cravings, which is weird because you figure we talked about it earlier about like how you eat and then you're like, I need to eat again. And why do I need to eat again? I just fucking hate. Same thing with when you wake up in the morning, like I'm well rested, but I need coffee to start my day. It's like you just slept for fucking 8 hours. How are you not totally fine? So the same thing happened for me. If I overeat, if I really indulge in and just not even overeat calories, just if I eat until I feel like I'm gonna like burst, it has a negative impact on me, and it makes me it kind of introduces me thinking about like foods that I shouldn't be eating.
I agree with that. But I think one thing that the times that I find that happens are the times that I do end up overeating, and the times I end up overeating is usually when there's added carbohydrates involved,
Right.
because like
Makes it easier, yeah.
it makes it easier. It makes it easier to get more calories down,
Like you did with the sushi.
like I did with the sushi.
Mm.
I haven't been that bloated in such a long time. So crazy. But yeah, when like now, since I do low carb, sometimes no carb, when I do eat meals, usually I fill up, and when I'm full, I can cut it. I'm like, I'm good. But when I have extra carbohydrates, when I usually end up overeating, it's because I ate too many carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are very easy to overeat, especially when accompanied with fat, protein, like we talk about all the time. So that's why like I limit that, but I do find that happens when I've gone a little bit too far with the carbs.
I find it pretty easy to get in a proper amount of protein. Do you?
Easy. Personally, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
I get in like anywhere between 220 to 250, 260.
I think each person should play around with like how they get to their protein. Like it's just going to be like individual. Some people maybe don't have an appetite to do it in 2 meals. If you don't have an appetite to do it in 2, I don't think there's any like steadfast thing that says like you can only eat 2 meals to like get yourself in great shape. We know this. We know that you can have multiple meals and still accomplish the same thing. But also play around with the fat that you're consuming, because sometimes the fat can make it much easier to eat more protein. But then you have to eat more overall food, which might make it more difficult. So, adding a protein shake in might be something that can be effective. But remember, consuming fat slows down the absorption rate, the gastric emptying. So it distributes calories in a lot longer time frame the more fat that you consume. So if you want to feel hungry, don't eat fat. If you want to kind of push the hunger off a little bit more, consume like a ribeye instead of just some really super lean steak. That's gonna kind of keep you real hungry.
Son, that falls into a question that we got here on Instagram. You guys preach about high fats. What are some good sources of fat you rely on? What about you? Because I know you get adventurous with it. So
Yeah. I eat all kinds of different meats and stuff like that, but it's usually just comes from steaks and I have fish oil here and there, but like I do like fish in general, so I do consume some fish, but people are always talking about like good fats and stuff. I'm not a huge believer. I just think that like I eat natural foods, and I think all the natural foods that there are, I think they all have good fats in them that are good for us. I do buy like the hippie eggs that have like the omega-3 blah blah in them. Whatever the fuck that means. I don't think that makes a big difference.
Blah, blah.
I do try to get grass-fed, grass-finished meat when I can. I don't think that matters a ton either. And that's usually how I get my fats in.
most of my fat comes from meat too. I'll sometimes add some Kerrygold butter on top of my steak. I get the fats from eggs. I don't really eat avocados, but people love to talk about avocados for good fats. But yeah, like, and that's the funny thing. It's like I've been eating this way for. Let me see. Is there anywhere else I get fats? I have bacon every now and then, and pork belly every now and then. That's a lot of fat. But meats and some butter sometimes, milk sometimes, Greek yogurt sometimes. But the funny thing is, my cholesterol is perfect. I know that a lot of people are saying release your blood work, and I will. Don't worry. But my cholesterol is literally perfect, and I just get all my fats from meat. I think one of the big reasons is because we're also active.
Yeah, same here.
Right.
My cholesterol, my profile, my lipid profile is like it couldn't be better. I don't think so. It's spot on.
Same here. I mean, that's why I like when I get to talk about like my low fat diet, my cholesterol and everything that right there is perfect as well. But yeah, I think, well, one thing I wanted to point out, I think you're underestimating your protein intake. I think you're having a lot more than just that. Because like I can accidentally have 200 grams of protein with the way I eat. And then in regards to my fat sources, yeah, it's not coming from yogurt. It's not coming from a lot of the stuff I eat.
Yeah.
However, thank goodness for Eat Right Foods, because the salmon, I actually am starting to enjoy eating
a good
that.
amount of fat in it.
And that's probably my
True.
most the most fat that I get is as far as like in one meal is going to come from that. And then ground beef is definitely one my, like, I indulge in that. I know it sounds silly, but it's because everything else I eat is very low fat. Because like, yeah, all the steaks from Piedmontese that I like, you know, I enjoy the fuck out of a flat iron steak. That's my favorite thing to eat, period. And it only has like 4 grams of fat. So it's not coming from the steak from in that department. So when I have the salmon or the ground beef, that's where I'm getting my healthy fat. And you guys are totally right. Like, since I've been having that, I've been feeling better. So yeah, I just have to make sure I can manage having all that while not feeling like I'm leaving, you know, calories for carbs else. You know what I mean? Like I'm not missing out. And so far I don't feel like I'm missing out.
I know you like to kill those Piedmontese patties. How much protein's in those? Probably like what, 20 grams in each one? 25?
Each patty probably 20. I'd say 25 to 30. That's my guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
They probably
I can't
have
even
them-
look it up.
They probably have.
You know, I think those a burger from like In-N-Out, I think my brother told me yesterday, I think it has about 6 grams of fat or something like that. It doesn't have that much fat in it without the
in
cheese.
the patty.
I think so, yeah. But it's just per one patty. You know, they usually, you know, we're always getting
aren't huge.
We're always getting doubles, right? The patties aren't big, right? And if you get like a double with cheese, but my brother said that more recently he's been ordering just the burgers by themselves, and then he'll get a few Flying Dutchmen with it too, just to reduce the overall calories that it comes with. He's like, there's enough cheese in like, you know, one Flying Dutchman to kind of cover, you know, most of the other burger that you get. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
That's the move I've been doing, and I just get everything mustard fried, and I won't usually
that shit's delicious.
I won't usually get fries, but I will from time to time. But yeah, dude, getting just the hamburger patties is fucking great when it's mustard fried. It's so good.
When I go to In-N-Out, my standard order is 6 Flying Dutchmans, but each of them can only have 1 thing of cheese.
That's good.
So it's always like 12 patties minimum at In-N-Out.
It was so funny. So we had some.
How do you order the 1 thing of cheese?
You just tell them.
Just tell them one cheese per Flying Dutchman.
Yeah, or you can ask for a double single, and they'll know what you're talking about.
Oh boy, thank you.
Yeah,
got a hack.
But depending on who they are, they might not understand that you want the Flying Dutchman version of that. But anyway, we had family in from Texas, and they were just like freaking out that I was like, yeah, I'll have 5 Flying Dutchmen and then like extra patties on the side. They're like, how many patties is that? I'm like, I think I've had like 18 to 20 in one sitting.
Yeah,
and they just like, yeah, they're so good. There's an adaptation period. At first, you can only have like 2 Flying Dutchmen, and then eventually you're having 5.
I love how we do this.
Every time
gets hijacked.
I'm fucking hungry now.
Just gonna talk about some fast food shit. It's wild.
Yeah, well, we don't even fast. we just talk about
the
it.
kicker.
My favorite thing we've ever done is if we didn't actually fast, and we're just always snacking on protein bars and going
trolling
in and out.
everybody all the time.
We are they. You know, when they say like they are only doing it for this reason, that's us.
That's us.
Fake natty fasting.
We're just stacking it up over here, counting our money.
Oh man,
Not our calories though.
Not our calories.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Want to take us on out of here, Andrew?
Sure
we have
thing.
yeah. There you go.
Or I mean, if you want to, I can check. But yeah, no. We'll everybody. If you guys have more questions, go ahead and list them out in the live chat, and then I'll go through, and then we'll answer them on the next one because we're probably going to keep this series going because it seems like everyone's digging it. So I appreciate it. If you guys do like it, please share it with somebody, and then please hit that like button. That way it helps the channel grow and helps get our message out there, and we can just help more people. That's the ultimate goal, is just to help more people. So please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. Again, thank you to Element for sponsoring today's episode. We were talking about fasting. It's one of the tools that we use daily to help get through our fast. Drink lmnt.com/power project. Pick up a value bundle. You will not regret it. My Instagram and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, what's going on over there?
I always like to throw out just like really wild, audacious goals and just see what happens. And if you guys have been listening to this podcast and you really dig it, there have been a lot of people that have been tuning in. We've gotten a lot of ratings. So rate and review us on Apple, but we want to get to maybe 100K on YouTube by the end of the year. I think that'd be pretty dope. And I think it's very manageable with, how people can grow on YouTube, but that also comes from the way people share stuff. So like Andrew said, like, we ain't just saying it, like, share this with somebody, because we're going to try to get to 100K by the end of the year. And if we don't, we're going to get close.
Mm-hmm. We're at 62K right now.
62. I think it's very possible.
And
we've been running
all
with some
of
good
you.
steam. So thank y'all. But yeah, you guys know my social. Nsima Inyang and Nsima Inyang. Mark?
At Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch y'all later. Bye.